again, this is one of the main themes in it, is that things are not always what they seem. And that you might think your childish impression of fairies might be that they're lovely and sweet, like Tinkerbell, and they grant wishes. But actually, they're like a horrible bug that's going to bite you, doesn't care about you. And so, again, it's another great life lesson, isn't it? Is that things that seem nice. A great one is, you must have had it as a younger man, when one of your first girlfriends or whatever, you fall in love with her, or she's so pretty. How could she possibly be really, really horrible
evil.
And mean?
Yeah.
How could she be evil? She's so pretty.
Yeah.
Just like a fairy. How could it bite me? It's like this tiny little perfect thing. And it's like, actually, it's horrible, and it doesn't care or like you really at all.
Yeah.
And not just girlfriends and things, but all sorts of...
that's
sometimes,
spot on,
I mean, I was blessed with nice parents, but sometimes your own parents will be malevolent or try and hold you down or whatever.
Yeah.
I think we'll get to it at the end, but I think also Bowie's character is something like breaking away from your parents at some point. One of the things about becoming an adult is, realising that your parents they do have no power over you at some point. Yeah. You've got to realise that.
Yeah, but you also got to reconcile in the... No, 100%. That's a brilliant point, because that actually feeds into how she discovers the door and the passageway with Hoggle and the worm, is that you've got to have this equilibrium between self-ownership, breaking away, and also not just sacrificing a piece of yourself to defend those who need it, like Toby, but also accepting the authority of the situation in which you're given, because she tries to hard rationalise the labyrinth at multiple situations, and it always leads to failure. She can't find the door when she's with Hoggle. She goes the wrong way with the worm and can't even find the passageway. In the most infuriating bit in the world, where the worm goes,
"If she'd have kept on going down that way, she'd have gone straight to that castle."
So frustrating. When she tries to logic her way out of the twin doors, where they're upside down, where she tries to draw lipstick on the paving stones and they get turned around, and then when she goes into the oubliette and she goes, "Well, I'm halfway through, I might as well drop to the bottom," and they go, "She chose down, too late now to change your mind." All those things are the catalysts to then her, stopping saying it's a piece of cake and actually going, "Okay, I'll play by the rules until I get where I want to go." And it's that little bit of humility, that recognition that you exist inextricably in a civilization. The civilization has rules that came long before you, and in the Chesterton's fence ideal, if you're conceited and you think that everything's arbitrary, you're the least likely person we want to put in charge of demolishing the gates, because all the sheep will escape. You've got to kind of submit to the idea that there's some things you don't know as a child moving through the world, and maybe if you go with it rather than trying to smash everything up with a hammer and reshape the world in your own image, then things might go better for you that way.
Yeah. There's one last line where she's talking to Hoggle outside the labyrinth at the beginning, where he says, "Shows what you know," which is an interesting line. But also he says, "You take too many things for granted."
Yes.
That's a theme that comes up again. Because when you're a child, I know it must be the same for nearly everyone in the world. It was the same for me. You sort of start entering the world with loads of preconceptions that you had from childhood. And loads of them are going to be wrong.
Yeah.
Loads of them will be wrong. And you'll have some harsh life lessons taught to you along the way, because you took for granted that, everyone's trustworthy, for example. Just one big one off the top of my head.
Well, this is why the young vote's so overwhelmingly left-wing. They're just like, why can't this be free? Or infantile economics of, well, why don't we just print more money? Which, unfortunately, many politicians seem to have adopted as actual monetary policy these days, loving this inflation. But it's the idea that you're coming into the world with not understanding, the Dunning-Kruger effect, not understanding the intricacies of something, but at the peak of your ignorance is when you're most confident that you're the person to enact change.
Yeah.
And so she's got to be put through the ringer and understand that I don't quite get the rules of this place, and I've got to submit to some of the rules in order for me to master not only myself, but to navigate the labyrinth and get my brother back. Yeah.
One bit when she gets into the labyrinth for the very first time, and before she meets the worm even, and she realises that it's just a straight line, both left and right. There's no real maze, there's no real labyrinth, it's just a straight line. And maybe I hope I'm not overdoing it here with sort of the metaphors and things. I don't think I am, but possible with this one. That she has like a burst of energy and she starts running. Again, I felt like in my youth, when you're sort of first sort of trying to make your way in the world after school or after A-levels or after uni or whatever it is, you're like, right, I've got energy, I've got fire in my belly, let's do this, let's run, let's do it. And then you do that for a while, and then you realise I'm getting nowhere. This isn't getting me anywhere. The fact that I'm just trying really hard is sort of not really getting me anywhere.
Yeah, you want to do too much too quickly without specification or direction. And so you do need to be channeled into one particular route to focus your energies and pace yourself. Like I've even struggled with that in recent times of where I feel an immense pressure to get all my workload done imminently in case I forget it or something like that. And it's like, well, no, you can put things to paper, you can commit them to memory, you can get things out over time, and you don't want to burn yourself out because the brightest stars burn half as long, to nick a line from Blade Runner.
Yeah. And then she sort of quite quickly runs out of steam and gets frustrated and just hits the wall, like it's hitting the wall, screaming. And again, it's like, you know, you hit 25, I haven't really got anywhere, I haven't done anything. You hit 30, 35, 40, more. I'm still going in the same straight line. I'm not getting anywhere. And then she has that interaction with the worm, that really, really cute worm.
It's charming,
It's really charming, isn't it?
Come inside and have a nice cup of tea.
Yeah, he's got like no concept of scale. It's hilarious. Yeah. But he says, that little worm, I think there's 2 or 3 bits in this film where it's really, really on the nose. It is almost saying, this is a life lesson. Yeah. Listen to this now. And that little worm, I think, because he says things like, she says, this is just a straight line. I'm not getting anywhere. And he says, you ain't looking right.
Yeah.
It's full of openings. This place is full of openings.
It's
just you ain't seeing them. It's right there in front of you. Things aren't always what they seem in this place. So you can't take anything for granted. That's the world. That's what the real world is like. Yeah, it looks like there's no openings for you, but you have to find them. They are there. There's lots of them, actually.
Yeah.
But it's up to you.
Yeah, you just have to commit yourself to a direction.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Stop with the blinkers that you've got this childlike view that you can only go left and right. No, it's complicated than that, and things aren't what they seem. Yeah. Isn't that true, though, in the real world, in real life? Things aren't what they seem a lot of the time. There are things that aren't immediately visible to you, but they're there. Yeah. I love that little worm. Yeah. And the bit where you said, and when she goes, thanks, and walks off, and she said, if she carried on going that way, she would have gone straight to their castle.
So frustrating.
But I think that's interesting as well, where I think there's something there where when people are extremely successful very early on in life, you become extremely famous when you're a teenager, or become a millionaire in your early 20s or something like that. That's not great. You need the setbacks, the struggle. You really do. You'll become a real well-rounded human being, a well-rounded adult, if you go through the labyrinth of life. If you go straight to the castle, if you go straight to being a millionaire or really famous, or having all your dreams met, whatever they are, it will be hollow. Or you probably won't. It's just not a good thing, actually.
Yeah, sometimes passing go too often on the Monopoly board doesn't teach you the value of money. You spend all of it on bad properties and you end up losing the game first. It's funny, you made a biblical reference earlier, and it reminded me of how in Genesis, the catalyst to human self-conception, to the understanding of evil, is coming to understand the vulnerability of nakedness. And it's the idea that in order for her to become fully self-aware, she needed to grasp the fact that not only people could, lead her astray and things like that, but that the world is not going to hand her things on a plate and she can't take things for granted, that people will try and actively set her back, or that things won't necessarily make sense. So you need to be put through the ringer. You need to take the bite of the apple and understand, oh God, I'm as vulnerable as anyone else is, to then have that self-conception of becoming a fully formed and fleshed out being capable of integrating into the family unit or a civilization. So speaking of fully integrated people capable of civilization, let's go to the inverse for the Dance Magic Dance sequence, shall we?
You remind me of the Babe.
What babe?
Babe with the power.
What power?
Power of voodoo.
Who do?
You do.
Do what?
Remind me of the Babe.
The goblins are fascinating. And partially it's because of the costume design, because loads of them wear like medieval or Viking or samurai armor, and they have really strange accents as well. Like the ones that are lynching Ludo are all Japanese for some strange reason. And I can't quite figure out the choices for other than, they just kind of sound funny. But it's almost like Jareth has got this eclectic collection of children, that's the implication, that have never grown up like the Lost Boys or Pinocchio's Pleasure Island. And so they're constructing cities and they're playing at being adults, but they have no economy, no obligations. Instead, they sort of just sit around terrorizing chickens, drinking beer, and dressing up in military uniforms. And despite them being completely kitted out with military uniforms, giant robots, automated cannons, and machine gun fire, they're the worst fighting army you've ever seen. They're defeated by a few boulders. So I like the idea that they're all playing pretend, at being adults in many respects, but they're adults without responsibility, and that's why they're utter dirty degenerate failures, just dancing around all the time for the king's pleasure. And then they're utterly terrified of him as well. You know, they can't even laugh without his permission because he's so insecure.
I think the goblins, because it sort of suggests, or does it explicitly say us? But anyway, that all the goblins are little babies like Toby.
Because he says goblin babe,
that weren't saved.
Yeah.
So I think the goblins are sort of a metaphor for bad kids.
Yeah.
Basically, kids that well, everyone knows bad kids. You know, proper bad kids that go to Ballstall, that do arson when they're like 8, and do GBH when they're like 13 and stuff. Proper bad kids.
Yeah.
That's what the goblins are, really. I think. And Jareth is their king, but he is a bit of a Peter Pan figure as well, isn't he? He's very spoiled. He's very self-absorbed, narcissistic, mean,
but he's
cruel.
unhappy as well.
He's cruel.
Yeah.
And well, he's a fascinating character. He stands for sort of so many things.
Yeah.
I think there's one last thing I want to mention just before that, the dance, where you see her doing the sort of Theseus thing, actually, of using her lipstick to write on the cobblestones, and then the labyrinth, the labyrinth screws with her, and she realizes it, and again she says it's not fair. Again, it's that's what will happen in life. Just behind you, directly behind you, people are screwing over what you've just achieved. And you might not even know. Yeah,
it's like warfare. You know, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. It's like your best laid plans to navigate the labyrinth is subject to the walls closing up behind you and random little Italian accented monkey creatures living beneath the place that you marked with lipstick and flipping them over because you've graffitied their roof. You know, it's just, you'd never account for that, but you couldn't. And so stop trying to overly rationalize the world and bend it to your will. You kind of got to go with it, because otherwise you're going to build it on faulty premises and your entire plan's going to fall apart. Yeah.
There's the bit where she comes up to the 2 doors and she turns round because it's some sort of dead end, or not exactly. She turns round and that really is a dead end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost 2 on the nose, but there's no way back. Almost always in life. There's no way back. Time is a linear thing.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to keep going forward. And what a childish thing it is, really, to sort of look back and say, I wish I could be a kid again.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was a teenager and thinking, God, it'd be so much easier if I was 9 again. My mum would just do everything for me, literally everything for me. That would be easier. I'd rather do that. But you realise quite quickly that that's not possible. And actually, not only is it not desirable, it's terrible. It's madness.
Yeah, arrested development, which is what Jareth has as well. But there's this indeterminacy as well, because she, at the start, as soon as she gets responsibility dumped on her, she wants to be a kid, right? But before that, she's trying to be a pseudo-adult far too early. And I can say I wanted that because I hated school. I didn't get on with very many people. As a kid, I always spoke to adults at parties and, things like that. And I perhaps took myself too seriously as a kid. And I always wanted to go, right, I want to skip to adulthood. I want to be on my own, all this sort of stuff. I want to move away from my family. And then you find out, even though there's great joys with adulthood, in that interim period when you're 17 to 19, and you're trying to figure out being an adult, you've got to pay your rent for the first time, you've got to do your own shopping, everything. You can do it and you can manage, but it's stressful. It feels like you're a rodent, tapping out the corners of the cage you've never been in before, a foot by foot, to make sure it's not like thin ice and there's going to be a predator lurking in a dark corner you didn't see.
You are now a normal rat. The normal rat is like this. That's the normal rat. Like this. Like this.
And so what she has to learn is she's got to take responsibility as a pseudo mother figure for Toby, but even that's still part of the family unit that she's meant to belong to. So she's got to be at once, it's coming of age, she's got to be at once submit to the authority of, you're still kind of a child, but also take the ownership of an adult. You've got to be in that interim period. You can't go backwards and you can't skip time and go forwards and rush through it. You can't say it's a piece of cake, I can just go straight to the end. You're stuck in the times you're in, and you've got to reconcile that you can't bend the world to your will. Yeah,
it's a great point, because we get the door bit where one of us always tells the truth and one of us always lies.
Which I've never been able to wrap my head around her logic.
I think one of the great bits of that is, sort of the overconfidence of youth.
Yeah.
Because when she thinks she's made the right decision, it's the first time in the movie, she spins round and says, it's a piece of cake, and he's immediately dropped into the...
Brilliant comedic timing,
yeah.
I think I'm getting smarter. It's a piece of cake.
I remember thinking that as a teenager, or in my 20s as a young man. It's like, I've got this.
Yeah.
Like life, I've got it.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about me. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then life smashes you one way or another.
Yeah, with the
Absolutely smashes you to bits, and you realise it's not a piece of cake.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.